Hello and welcome to Contact Payroll online training. I'm Rupert. In this chapter, I would like to talk about the 6 steps of processing in Contact Payroll. So let's get on with that by logging into the Contact Payroll system. I'm logging in with the default username and password. We're not going to read the message at this time, and we're going on to the third icon, which is the 6 steps of processing. Then just to briefly discuss, the first icon is for my transactions for employees. The second step is for global calculation. The third step is for my transaction register. The fourth step is for process payment. The fifth step is for process payment register. And then, of course, the sixth step is for my payslips. So going on to the first step, you'll see I've already loaded an employee record, which comes from yesterday's video of setting up an employee record. So if you're not familiar with setting up employee records, you can just refer back to the previous video. I've already put figures in here, which I'm just briefly going to remove. And then I'm going to do an undo calculation for the system transactions. As you can see, the employee appears black. If there's multiple records, you'll see the employee appears black when it hasn't been calculated, and as soon as you calculate this employee record, it appears in blue. So what we're going to do, I'm going to put in an amount of 20,000 Rand monthly remuneration, other remuneration, let's say 3.5, and then overtime, let's say for instance 5 hours. Now if you look on the right hand side of the screen, you will see there we've got hourly rate of 115 Rand 37 times my 1.5 factor, because we're working with overtime 1.5, and the unit rate per hour is then 173.50 times my 5 hours, which gives me 865.25. So that is basically the transactions that I've just read in. Once I do the calculation, the payroll will then calculate, just to show you, it will calculate the employer UIF, the system pay as you earn, and UIF employee, and it will work out the net pay salary for this employee. So if you would do a calculation on this screen where all the employees are listed, it will show you the net pay as well as an asterisk in the calculation field to show that this employee has been calculated. On the right side of the screen, there is some additional information regarding this employee record. You can also move between employee records swiftly by clicking the next employee button or the previous employee button, and you can also use this calculate feature to calculate and move on to the next employee record. So basically on this screen, I didn't enable leave transactions because this is the entry level starting videos, but for the advanced videos you can view those sessions to see how the leave transactions are set up and how they've been processed. So this is the leave transaction tab. For now we're only doing the normal transactions. Then you've got the payment transactions, you've got the deductions, you've got contributions and benefits, all showing separately on those tabs. So when you work on the all this period tab, it actually shows you all the transactions, payments, deduction, contributions and benefits, all on one tab. Then of course you've got the period details, which tells you that you are now working in the first period of 2013, which is the 1st of March 2013 to the 31st of March. Of course I just appointed this employee on the 25th of March, which means that he's effectively going to have 5 work days for the month of March. I didn't complete the holiday table, so that's why the payroll is not bringing in the holiday calculation. Then I've got my summary analysis, which just shows that my taxable payments for this period I'm busy with is 24,000, and I've got deductions of 8312.31, which minus the gross of 24 will then gives me the 16052.94. So that is just the summary analysis screen. Then we've got a tax analysis screen, and the tax analysis screen is quite handy. It actually shows you how the tax has been calculated. I'm not going too deep at this stage into the tax calculation screen. We will get back to that. And then you've got your recurring. Now this is a very important tab. If you go to recurring here, or you click on the recurring button here, it's exactly the same thing. It will open up a yellow tab for you. Now what this actually means is you can put in an amount here, let's say of 30,000 Rand, and it will actually change the period amount also to 30,000. And why am I talking about recurring and period? Recurring means that it will recur every month or every period. Say the employee works weekly, for every week this amount will reoccur for this employee. This is a monthly employee, so it means that for every month the employee will get a fixed monthly remuneration of 30,000. The payer will add it in automatically. You can though go into a specific period and say, well, for this period I would like to pay the employee 25 instead. So if you look at the screen for monthly remuneration, you will see that the recurring is on 30,000 and the period is on 25, which means that the employee will be paid for this period only 25, but in the next period it will revert back to 30,000 Rand. So that is a very handy function to use in the payroll system, because you can set transactions to recurring and it will automatically recur in the next period, and you can go and overwrite what you don't want. Then of course you've got year-to-date transactions, which just shows you the balances. If you look, we've got a year-to-date tab here which just opened, and it will show you the year-to-date balances for the year for these transactions. Unfortunately, we've only got one period now processed, so you can't see the effect. And then of course you've got the, if I just go to all this period to where we were, then you've got the days worked, you've got transaction bundles, transaction cleanup. I'm not going to go into the advanced features. And then you've got the transaction setup details are quite important, because if you go to your transaction master file, you can go check how a specific transaction was set up. But for example, if I click on other remuneration and I click on transaction setup, it shows me that this transaction has been linked to the IIP5 tax code 3601. It has been enabled for pay-as-you, and it has been enabled for UIF. Sorry, I just clicked it away. It has been enabled for net pay. So as I've explained yesterday with the transaction master file, when a transaction was enabled for net pay, it actually increases the salary of the employee. If, for instance, we would like to give the employee other remuneration only for tax purposes, but not physically giving him the money in his own pocket, then we will mark that transaction not as net pay affected. So it will increase the salary, it will take pay-as-you in on that amount, but it won't increase the employee salary, which means that the money won't be paid out to the employee. Right, so that is basically the first step of my processing. Now, I'm sure I've covered all the bases. Right on top here it says default cost center, so it even shows you on which cost center you are currently working, and here on the side also it shows, and that's your transaction code for the transaction. That's the transaction's description. You can modify the transaction description to your own description, so you can add in here for March 2013 or whatever information you would like to add in, you can add there, and that will also then print on the employee's payslip. And of course you've got your remaining balances and periods. Those are mainly for capital balances and employee loan reducing balances. So you would basically put in the employee borrowed so much from the company, deducting so much per month, and then the balance will actually show in that column. Right, so we can go on to the next step. I've calculated this employee. No, I haven't, so let's just calculate this employee. So it shows a star, it shows the net salary that the employee is getting out. So I can go back onto the next step. The second step is for global calculation. Now this is very handy when I've got 20, 30 or even 200 employees on my payroll system, because I can calculate them all at once. The problem is at this point in time, if I'm going to calculate, it's going to tell me there are no records. Why is that? Because I've already calculated my one employee. So I can calculate them individually, and then I can go back into global calculation and calculate either the balance or all of my employees. So just to give you an example, I'm going to undo calculation this employee. I'm going to do a global calculation for all of them, which then is the one employee that I've calculated, and it looks exactly the same. So you can do a global calculation instead of calculating your employees one by one. Of course, you've also got the option to range. You could say calculate for one branch specifically. You can also calculate specific employee ranges by clicking that button, which opens up the group, and then I can select my employee that I would like to calculate, or whether I would like to calculate a range of employees, say all the vans or all the vendor or whatever my employee codes are. I can range on a specific range of employees and only calculate those. And then of course, if my leave calculations were enabled in this organization, this option will be enabled. Right, then I've got the third option, which is the third step rather, which is my transaction register. Now the transaction register shows all the employees that I have calculated. So it gives me a message: you have selected to exclude the summary report. So there is a very handy summary report which I would like to show you. If you click that button, it will include the summary report. So it gives you your first report. This is the landscape format report in columns. There's my monthly remuneration, my other remuneration, my overtime, my pay as you earn UIF for the employee, and the UIF for the employer with my totals. So this is a very nice report. And then of course, as soon as I've printed this report, another report will open, and this is my summary report. So the button that I've checked here on the screen allows me to print the transaction register and the summary.